Everything started from Canberra in 2017.
It was driven mainly by a change, I believe, in the United States' attitude towards China at around about that time.
Now, it's deep-seated and it's deep-rooted, and it's really strange, given that China is our biggest trading partner, to agree with America that China is also our potential enemy.
China has demonstrated the most remarkable forbearance and patience with Australia. Australia's been behaving like a petulant child.
Welcome everyone to Global Times Forum on China-Australia ties. 2017 is considered a watershed in China-Australia relations. What is the biggest differences in the bilateral ties before and after the year? And maybe why 2017?
Well, of course, 2017 was when the then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull introduced the foreign interference laws, which were fairly clearly directed at supposed interference by China in Australia's political affairs. It was driven mainly by a change, I believe, in the United States' attitude towards China at around about that time.
This is a complex question which goes to the heart of Australian politics, and it's been developed. This aspect of Australian politics has been developing for a long time now, pre the war in Vietnam, and we have an alliance, an arrangement with the United States, which is very immature, and which makes us psychologically, emotionally, and intellectually dependent upon the United States. Now, it's deep-seated and it's deep-rooted, and it's really strange, given that China is our biggest trading partner, to agree with America that China is also our potential enemy. There's factors that are feeding into this are the Murdoch press in Australia, and the collapse of what we call the mainstream media, the move to the right by other, what you might call more liberal outlets such as the ABC. It's been a concerted move.
If I remember correctly, Sky News Australia is owned by Rupert Murdoch. So who is fanning the flame, or which forces exactly are fanning the flames, and what are their purposes?
Well, Rupert Murdoch represents one of the great pillars of Western and particularly United States capitalism. He is a right-wing capitalist par excellence, as the French would say. And he of course, is now a United States citizen, and he's very much tied up with the permanent establishment in Washington that rotates from one administration to another, and which has been driving the United States military policy for many years. And he's basically working hand in glove with them to conduct the disinformation campaign, the propaganda war against China.
The media and the so-called experts work together, in a concerted efforts to fool and mislead the public. Very often, some so-called inside sources would deliberately give a leak, provide some dubious inside information, so-called inside information, to some journalists, especially those.
That's always Aspie.
yeah, with some extremist or hawkish attitudes. The media outlets then would put together some outlandish stories, stir up public scare. At this point, SP, and some so-called experts, will come out to be cited to appear in the papers and on television to give their opinion, as authorities, in this field, in China studies. And then there would be a poll, a survey for public opinion. So you can imagine, for example, for the past 12 months, over the media, newspapers, websites, television, everywhere, you've been, reading and seeing, reports and stories about a demonized and totally distorted China. And then you're given some poll questions to ask you, what is your impression of China? Do you have a positive or negative opinion about China? And of course, very naturally, with the misinformation, misguidance, the public opinion will be very negative. So, and then they will cite the poll results to say, the Australian public have a negative opinion about China. And with that, they will then push for changes to the policies or new policy, which would, of course, be very hostile to China. And voila, it's now a fait accompli. I think, this time the Sky News is playing exactly the same trick.
You've got to admire China for its forbearance and in seeking to maintain the relationship and to build the relationship in the face of what is a rather puerile response on the part of Australian policymakers. A forum like this, of course, is very heartening because to get with like-minded people is very good. But I can't see where the leverage is going to come on Australia. We don't have an opposition in Australia. It's collapsed, but we don't have an opposition. Therefore, there's nobody holding a mirror up to government in Australia. And you've both mentioned the media in Australia that's not holding a mirror up to government.